Would you like to learn why the technical fundamentals of architects like cloud architects, enterprise architects, and security architects are very different than the fundamentals of engineers like cloud engineers and security engineers? And if so, this video is good for you. In this video, I'm going to discuss why you can do all the labs in the world, and I'm not saying labs are bad, but you'll never learn architecture fundamentals by doing them, specifically the technical fundamentals, and you're going to have to learn them another way. And let's talk about why. Realistically speaking, they're different fundamentals, but why? See, whether we're a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, we need good, strong technical fundamentals, but not in the way most people think. See, architecture fundamentals are how the systems actually work. So in cloud computing, that might actually mean the data center, the actual servers, the switches, the routers, the storage, and everything that powers that cloud environment, for example. We are very concerned with how these systems work under the hood. Now, we are very concerned as architects is how these systems interact. What is the significance of the network and its impact on block storage performance inside of a virtual machine? That's something we care about deeply. Now, we as architects focus on how constraints shape design. Now, there could be new laws or regulations, and that would shape our design some way. Interest rates can change, market dynamics can change. And how does that, or even financial constraints, or whatever, affect our actual architecture? And as architects, we focus on how technology choices will impact the business. So if we look at two architectural options or technology options, each one has strengths, each one has weaknesses, and which will produce the best results for the business. That's what we're concerned about as an architect. So we architects are responsible for designing systems that will scale, survive change, and support strategy. And that requires you to understand the technology at the system level, not at the task level. For example, at a cloud provider, we'd click a few boxes on a management console. So what do labs actually teach? And I'm not saying labs are bad. Labs are great if you want to be an administrator. Labs are great if you want to be an engineer. And if you want to be an architect and you want to build it after you learned all your fundamentals, that's fine too. But you have to learn the fundamentals, and you can't learn them by doing labs. Because here's what labs are going to teach you. How to configure a service. Okay. Which buttons to click. Fine. Which command to run. And basically how to follow a recipe. But we don't do any of that in our architecture roles. We don't touch the technology. So labs will answer the questions and teach you things like, how do I deploy this? How do I configure this? And how do I make this tool work? And that's very valuable for an engineer or an admin that's part of their job. That's using a tool that has nothing to do with architecture. So labs will train the people that operate the networks or operate the environments or operate the systems, but they won't teach them how to design it. So let's talk about tool knowledge versus architectural understanding so you can really get the distinction here. Tool knowledge is how do I do something? How do I upgrade Linux? How do I upgrade a Linux kernel? That's tool knowledge. Whereas architectural knowledge is knowing why something works, when it should be used, and when it should not be used. So an engineer might be asking the question, how do I configure Kubernetes? No, we architects are going to ask, is Kubernetes really the right control plane for our containers and our environment? And should we be using it or not? What do we gain? What do we lose? And what labs don't teach are failure modes or trade-offs or scaling limits or things like cost behavior or the impact of the organization of the technology. But that's the job of the architect. So that's what we're paid to do. So what architecture fundamentals really are going to be sort of as following. So they're about understanding how compute, storage, networking actually behave, how is the state managed of a session potentially across systems, how a system will scale horizontally, how you would scale it vertically, how latency, throughput, resilience will impact the organization, for example, and how latency and even jitter could impact an application, how security and reliability would be designed in the entire solution as opposed to bolted on later. So we architects are focused on systems thinking. And that means in order to understand the entire system, we have to understand how the parts interact, how one change will ripple through the system, and where the constraints actually are. Now, no lab teaches you that because the lab teaches you how to, which is completely different than this. Now, architecture is not about how to. Whether it's an enterprise architect or a cloud architect, it's not about a step-by-step, how do we do this? We don't touch the technology. We're there strategists. The people that do that are engineers, and they need to do lots of labs. But see, architecture is about design, structure, aligning business and technical needs, and making decisions under constraints. So we architects will look at multiple options. We will look at the business requirements. We will look at the organization's risk tolerance and even cost models, or the capabilities that the organization needs. For example, what kind of business capabilities, enhancement of sales, what have you, enhancement of customer service. And then we make a recommended direction. So labs won't teach you how to evaluate trade-offs. They'll just teach you how to complete a task. So completely different set of skills. And here's the missing piece that labs never get. And this is the most critical part for the architect. As architects, technology does not exist in isolation. And we have to understand what problem the business is trying to solve. Maybe it's a hospital that's trying to make less medical errors and they caused us in to make that happen. Maybe it's an airline that wants to buy fuel at a cheaper price and they want to use some kind of AI for better forecasting. As architects, we focus on what constraints matter, whether it be risk or something else or finance or whatever. So these architecture fundamentals are real about how do I take this business problem like I want to enhance revenue? And how do we put that together into a total design? And that usually, at least at an enterprise architect level, is the business architecture, the application architecture, the data architecture, and the technology architecture. Of course, with a platform architect, it could be just focused on, say, just cloud or just security, but it's all to the same goal, the organization's business needs. And that's why when you meet an architect, especially a chief architect, a distinguished architect, a principal architect, or anybody that's made it, we talk about outcomes, not tools. And this is one of the reasons a lot of people get stuck on their way to move to architecture. Because they're excellent at doing, they're excellent at building, and they're excellent at configuring things. And they're very valuable skills for the engineer. And we need engineers, but architecture requires abstract thinking. Design judgment. If we do this, what happens? If we do this, what happens? The various trade-offs. I can choose this option because it features X, Y, and Z, but this one has Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, and those are more important to our business, so we're going to choose this option. And of course, we're focused on business alignment. And you don't learn that by following instructions and going to Linux and touching a few things, but you do learn it by understanding how the systems work and how they fit together, their pain points, their breaking points. So I'm not saying labs don't have their place, but if you want to be an enterprise architect or a security architect or a cloud architect or an AI deeper architect, you got to go deeper. And you need to learn how the technology works, how the technology fits together, how the technology scales, how it breaks, and how it enables the business. Because architecture is not about a tool. It's about designing systems that matter, systems that give the business what it actually needs. And that's really what separates, engineers and architects. Engineers build it, architects design it. Now, if you'd like to become an enterprise architect or a cloud architect or an AI architect or a security architect, we hold 2 free architecture webinars every week. These webinars are hosted on Zoom. We'll talk about the architecture career, what you need to learn to be a great architect, how to get ahead, how to stand out from the crowd. And it's all free on Zoom. And also you'll be able to ask me any questions you want about a cloud architect career, security architect career, AI architect career, or any architect career for that matter. And I'd be happy to answer your questions live and free on these free Zoom sessions. You can find a link to these Zoom sessions in the description of this video. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell and button to be notified of new videos to assist you in your architecture career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in a free webinar, in class, or in the next video. Take care.